Hi, this is Kristen Christie. Hope is not canceled. Thank you for listening in to the Shadows Podcast.
All right, welcome everybody to another episode of Shadows Podcast. I am your host, Trip Bodenheimer, but I'm super excited here today to have an opportunity to talk to Oleksandr Kalinin. He is a professional military education instructor. He is part of the 56th Force Support Squadron Airman Leadership School. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
So before we get started, somebody driving down the road, they're not in the military. Tell them a little bit about who you are.
Okay. So my name is Oleksandr Kalinin, born and raised in Ukraine. It was interesting because, my story doesn't start in the dungeon. It isn't, it's not one of those stories that, it starts in anything crazy. we lived in Ukraine. My family did okay. But by no means were we wealthy. So both of my parents have businesses and everything was going good. And then, of course, 2008 happens. What happens in 2008? Recession. People across the globe, for the most part, started looking for a way out. So my dad always wanted to, well, my parents, I should say, always wanted to move to Canada. So they want to move to Canada. And Canada is really weird because they have a program that's like, if you don't meet the age limit, you're out. It's one of those. So they start looking and they come across like, there's this green card lottery, whatever. And my dad's college friend actually won back in the 90s, I believe, or early 2000s. So anyhow, so we start looking out, and my parents start looking at it. And I remember they applied, and then of course they moved to the States. It's looking back to it, it sounds so easy, but of course there was, for kids, like we don't know. For us, it's like, oh, we take another trip, we won, whatever. But as you start looking closer, it was, because it's a lottery ultimately.
Yeah.
So you apply, you win, you go. And I always tell people it isn't golden ticket to the chocolate factory. Better, take it to a new life. And after that, so we moved, and then of course when we got to the States, that's when your typical, if you will, immigrant story begins. My parents start cleaning houses. We start going to school. We help them on the weekends. Little by little, no friends, and then these things start to change. We start going to school, meeting folks. And then of course I come to graduation from high school. It's time to apply to colleges, and I look at my school advisor and say, what? So my dad has always been a big military person. He was in the military in his time, and we started doing research and such. And I didn't know how to fill out college applications. And on top of that, my dad did all the research necessary. So he was like, all right, you go in Air Force to fly jets. I walked to my recruiter's office. I said, I want to fly jets. He said, congratulations, you go in the Civil Engineer Squadron. After that, went through, of course, basic training in Lackland Air Force Base, Texas. I did 5 years of that. 5 years of, I was fixing air conditioners. So that was pretty cool. And after that, I went through Airman Leadership School, and I remember it was really cool environment, really high energy. And I remember my instructor at the time looked at me and she's like, Alex, Kalinin, you should work here. And I was like, oh, please, you flatter me. But as time went on, I started realizing that that there was definitely truth to that. I like people. I really enjoy the PME environment. And when I got certain opportunity, there was no doubt in my mind, that I would make it. That's looking back at it now, it seemed easy. However, going through the process and applying and all those things, it was pretty nerve wracking, if you will. But and then I made it, and the rest is history, and now we're just, looking at the future and kind of excited to see what the future holds.
Tell everybody just about like your childhood. What was it like growing up in Ukraine?
It was good. I mean, as a kid, I had a lot of fun. It was really cool, but as a kid, you just get used to like living in the moment and such. And well, it was what was fun is of course having friends, and everything is good. And I only realized what made it home when I moved to the States, right? But the thing is, so in Ukraine, I remember you go by day by day, and you don't. The one thing that I guess I was missing was like the sight or the picture of the future. I just like I didn't know, once again, like, oh, school, college, university, what's that like? Yeah, it was good. We lived in a condo, and your typical played soccer. My dad was always, I guess, on the side of our athletic development. So my brother and I, we went to we did taekwondo, kickboxing. My brother did boxing. So always trying to do something, right?
Yeah.
Swimming, what have you. And my mom was always on the side of, she was more so into like reading and going to. She actually put me up. I went to art school, so she was really like artsy, if you will, and my dad was really like athletic. Um, but it was good. It's no complaints. I guess it's the friendships were cool, and um, Europe is different, So when I moved here, I was kind of like, wow, things were so different. My first summer here, I remember I had no friends, I had nothing. So that was like tough transition. But growing up in Ukraine was cool. It's I actually went back for the first time, and it was interesting kind of to see where you grow up um, as the time passes. But it was I don't know, no complaints, I guess.
What did your parents do there?
My mom owned a my mom had a shop. She was seamstress, I think it's called here in the States.
Yep.
But she altered clothes.
Mhm.
She altered them. She could make clothes and such. So it was her own shop. Um, and my dad was so he started so when the Soviet Union fell, he started traveling to Europe and bringing goods both in and out, and that grew because he would travel with um what are they called? He had like a van, when they first started like doing the exchange, and the Iron Curtain, raised up, if you will. So he did that, and then he went from like a minivan to a bigger van, and then he went into ultimately semis, and then he had his own, semi trucks going back and forth. So he had that business. I think he was up to two or three that he had working for him, and my mom had her own clothes shop.
You mentioned the recession,
Yes.
2008.
Yep.
Is that really where things started to change for y'all?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say so because my dad and my mom, they had their own businesses, and they were growing, ultimately. And then new business opportunities came and such, and my parents invested a lot of money into things, and then '08 financial crisis. As a kid, you don't know, but looking back at it, now that I'm getting grown and such, and talking back to my parents, I asked them, what was that like, and they're like, oh, dude, it was crazy, But they don't to kids, you don't show that, and now only now I'm learning what that was like. Only now I'm learning whether or not things started to change, and they did because nobody knew how things were going to work out. So
Mhm.
my parents were looking for one avenue, another one. So they were looking for many, many ways out, if you will. Maybe we can start another business. Maybe we can, learn another craft. It was almost one of those rock bottoms from where people ultimately rise up, and that's exactly what happened to us.
And then you said they applied for the Diversity Immigration Visa Program, which is like the you called it the green card lottery. What do you remember about that whole process?
Oh, I remember everything. My parents, now I'm learning this, of course, now that I'm grown. My dad had this idea. My dad's big on ideas, period. So he had this idea and he brought it to my mom, and my mom was like, "Oh, what are you talking about? This is, craziness. This is never going to happen. Nobody wins these things." Um, and I remember, so what I remember now is we were in school and my parents came in, picked us up.
You were what,
And
around 15 at this time?
so when we applied, I was 14, I
Okay.
think. So I was 14. My birthday is in December. So we applied in 14, and then in spring we won. So we apply. So how we applied? My parents came and picked us up from school, and we went to the photo. When they take what are they called?
Like the passport photos.
Yes, passport photos. Yes. So they take us, and I remember my mom didn't want to do it. She was kind of like, "Oh, this is another mad idea," So she's tripping up, and my dad's like, "No, we got to do this. Got to do this." It was kind of like it didn't matter whether or not it was a good or bad call. You just need to get done because the timeline was there. The urgency was now there. So we took photographs, and then we print. We didn't print. So you apply online. So we took the photographs, and we applied like that same day. It was kind of like he discovered it 2 days later. We applied, and then that was it. It was kind of forgotten about. And then I remember my parents loved telling the story. So I remember my dad was like, well, yeah, so I picked up a letter in our mailbox, and it was, random yellow letter. Now I know what that means, because how letters are in says, but it was a letter, and he said like no seal, nothing crazy, didn't look official. It was just a letter from like Kentucky or whatever, USA. And then he opened it, and it was a whole bunch of writing and reading and letters and words. And my dad was like, "Oh, it sounds like another scam, if you will." And so he took it to my English tutor, and my English tutor, I remember, he said he opened the package. He looked at my parents and he said, "Congratulations, you going to America."
Wow.
And and then I just remember because it's interesting, you win, if you will, like that's your initial letter, but there's still an entire process that has to take place.
Sure.
Because the first part is random, but as it goes on, it's you have to do like your background checks, your employment, whatever, like everything has to get checked.
Mm-hmm.
So I just remember my dad was saying, he tells a story, he went and him and my mom were sitting around dinner table that night, and it was crazy because before it sounded like this crazy possibility. You don't really think of the consequences. And then he said that we were sitting around dinner table, and kids are of course sleeping, my brother and I, and he said, kind of like, should we do this or not? Because now the work starts. And that's what happened to my parents. And then they decided to, collect themselves and kind of put all their efforts together and do this thing. And after that, what I remember is ever since we got that letter, which sounds so weird, you're looking back at it, since we got that letter, there was no doubt in my mind that we're gonna move, like zero. It's so weird. A few things like that, in life happened to me, and it was one of those. And we went to Poland for the U.S. embassy, because Ukraine didn't have like the U.S. embassy like that. They had like a business fund or something, but not immigration per se. So went to Poland, and then there you have your interviews, and they take your thumbprints and fingerprints, and now they look at your records. So now you're interacting with the U.S., if you will. Yeah, and after that we gathered our things. My dad contacted his friend, and she lived in Seattle, and that's actually an important piece too. You can't just move. Where are you gonna go? Where are you gonna live? We contacted her, and she found us an apartment, she picked us up from the airport, all those things. And we just flew over to New York, which is actually really interesting because my dad thought it was a disaster. Well, we were all nervous, but you know how dads are. They're used to having the situation under control. So we flew out into New York, and we flew into JFK. You ever been to JFK?
Yep.
Flying to JFK, and it's a disaster. It looks like, Times Square. Well, all of New York looks like Times Square, but people are running around screaming in a foreign language. We don't understand anything. We're supposed to go somewhere, and so we had a layover. So it wasn't like walk from this plane to this plane. Something like connection didn't get made or something. So we had to now go to a hotel, sleep somewhere, and then get back to the airport in the morning and fly out. So all of this, now that I'm explaining it, it makes sense. But before, it certainly didn't. And my dad, I remember, he's losing his mind, and everybody's going crazy. But yeah, somehow one way or another, we figured it out, and we went to the hotel, made the connection in the morning, and yeah, flew into Seattle. That was our journey. Looking back again, it sounds so easy and worry free, and I tell this story with such ease. But my parents like, oh my God, you have no idea, what was happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, I'm sure that was stress. It's just like anything with parents. I remember my family moved from one state to another when I was young, and as a kid, I was like, oh, nice, this is great.
Oh, yeah.
But my parents were super stressed beyond belief. New job, new beginning, totally understandable. So just to kind of shed some light onto that selection process you were talking about. And this is coming from the article that was posted from AETC, but it said, through the program, applicants of low admission countries, any country with fewer than 50,000 natives admitted to the United States in the previous 5 years, are eligible to enter the lottery for a U.S. visa. However, according to the American Immigration Council, the odds of being randomly selected are slim, with an average of 13.3 million people submitting applicants every single year. Like you said, just good timing, everything worked out right and got you over here. So you went from, when you first got here, what were some of the struggles that your family, other than layovers at JFK, what were some of the other struggles that y'all had getting adjusted from coming from Ukraine to the United States?
My parents, of course, biggest struggle is the finances, right? So we fly in, and because of the unfortunate situation that happened in Ukraine, my parents had to like borrow money to move, So you borrow money, we fly in, and now we're in a new country, jobless, we don't speak the language, and we're in debt. This is my parents. I was having fun. So what do? Where do we live? So living situation got solved. Somebody that my dad's friend knew had us. She had an apartment that she owned. This is another lady, but she like didn't live there. It was her. It was her. I don't know, like a side apartment, whatever. She had multiple properties, from what I understand. So we lived there. I'm not sure if we paid rent or didn't. I don't know. And my parents actually worked alongside her. So she connected them with this other businessman, if you will, who was in the cleaning business. So cleaning houses, like maids, if you will. So that's what my parents were doing, and you don't make a lot of money doing it. So the way to compensate for lack of pay, you just have to do more work, So my parents were doing that, and it was tough. You don't speak the language. You have to now travel around. You have to get driver's license. Once again, we have to get a car. So I remember we bought this minivan from a huge family. We found this family on Craigslist, actually, and they sold us Dodge Caravan. One of those 2000 vans. Oh my God, what a beauty. So yeah, and so we bought it from this Ukrainian family. It was so interesting. It was a family of 12. So matter of fact, 14, 2 parents, and they have 12 kids. So they brought this van over, and my parents picked it up, and then they started, going to work. First couple of months, and this was after a couple of months, because we moved in, and you get our papers. First of all, you have to get like your IDs and all that stuff, and you know how postal system here, it just but with postal system, you have to wait for so and so to come in, for this to come in, identification number, your social security cards, like all of that stuff. We didn't have our actual green cards yet,
Yeah.
so that has to come in the mail, all those things. So we're just kind of sitting around, living off of our savings, if you will. Walk into the grocery store and little by little, so first 2 months, I think we weren't really doing a whole lot. We were just kind of waiting on those things to settle. Watching TV, binging shows. It was pretty cool, pretty easy. But after a while, my parents' anxiety starts to settle in. Like, you have to do something. You can't live off of savings forever, and that's not to mention that these savings isn't even our money. So little by little, and but when they finally went to work, and my brother and I finally got put in school, which it was the biggest struggle for me, was not, of course, not knowing anyone. So summer starts. We started school in April, I believe.
And what grade were you in?
I was in 9th grade at this
Okay.
time.
So freshman.
Yep. Tough love.
Whew.
But it was interesting because I didn't go to school since that winter, because we were moving and everything, so I skipped like 3 or 4 months of school, just got missed. And then I get, tossed back in school for, I get tossed back in school for 2 months. I make no friends. I don't understand anyone. So we go through it, and then summer it kicks off, and everybody's happy to be out of school. And my brother and I are just kind of like sitting around our apartment looking at each other like, what the heck? So it was, I think that first summer was kind of sad for us, and sad in the sense of you just don't do anything, people in 2019 or 2020 rather, it's kind of like now you have to sit at home, and people now understand what it's like to go, to go a little bit crazy when you're home all day. But that's all we did. And we would just hang out with each other, and we didn't really go outside, because in America, like, you don't just go on walks, you don't just ride bikes around. It felt like, because we lived kind of in the city area, very urban, so there wasn't a whole lot of outdoor activities.
Yeah.
So I found my escape connecting with my friends in Ukraine via Facebook and such. It was actually interesting because we didn't have Facebook. We had this other website that was Russian. And I remember before I discovered Facebook, I looked up. So this is kind of funny story. I remember I was like, there's got to be social media in America. So I looked up American teens website, and you don't want to know what came up, but it was fun. And I discovered Facebook, and I started connecting with people the following year. But that summer, I was just playing a lot of online gaming, and just being a total nerd and not having any friends. It kind of sucked, but again, it all passed, and school started, and it got a lot easier since then.
How were the kids with you at school your freshman year?
Not bad. Nobody, and this is the wonderful part, because at no point in America I felt like I was excluded because I was foreign,
Nice.
It was nice. It was, nobody ever, like, I guess, pointed a finger at me, or nobody ever made fun that I didn't understand things. And there were, little instances, but they're not, worthy, I guess, to even remember, because nobody was at any point hostile, if you will.
Yeah.
I think when I first moved, it was actually so weird phenomenon. When I first moved to America, we went to one school, this one high school, and there was a lot of Ukrainians and Russians. That's kind of why we went to that school. And then it was really weird because when there were many, like, they weren't friends. It was so weird. Like, they started their own, like, drama within the Russian community of the school, if you will. So the following year, when I went to a different school, there was very little Russian people, And I was kind of like forced to figure things out on my own. And when I did meet people who spoke Russian, we were really friendly because there was so few of us,
Yeah.
unlike the year before, you know. But no, people were cool, and teachers were really nice. And I met a lot of, when I went to my first ESL class, that is, you know, English second language. So I was considered an ELL student, which is English language learner. And yeah, I met a lot of cool people from different parts. I met somebody from Middle East, I remember, and then this other this other kid was from Philippines, and it was really cool. And it was the environment was just so welcoming, if you will, of different people.
Yeah.
You know, so it was really nice. I think people were good, and there were a couple of instances, you know, someone would try to challenge me, or you know how people get.
Yeah.
And I shut that stuff down real fast.
No violence. I was
But
gonna say that was the last time they dealt with you.
yeah, that was it.
I lived in Germany for 6 years. I loved
Okay.
Europe. I would go back to Europe right now. If somebody told me to pack my bags, I would go.
Mhm.
Nothing against America.
Sure.
But I really loved just how everybody lives over there. It's just so much different. For somebody who has never experienced life in Europe compared to life in the US, what would you say is like the biggest difference other than social media like it is now?
Okay.
I notice whenever we go out to eat,
Uh-huh.
and you got to eat in Europe,
Uh-huh.
Europeans love to sit down. They don't want a menu. They just want to talk. They want to enjoy each other's company. It's not a lot of cell phones. You go to a restaurant in the US and people want their food right now. They want their food 10 minutes ago. They're ready to go. They want their check. They're on their phones. They're so just go, go, go. For you though, what would you say was the biggest difference between European way of life and here in the States?
Okay, so the single biggest difference, and I thought about this many times. Single biggest difference was people in Europe spend a lot of time outside. They're like walking, people go on walks,
Yep.
people go on
They talk to neighbors.
exactly. They talk to neighbors, they go downtown, they go to restaurants, cafes, and it was so weird because I moved to the States and nobody was outside. I was like, why are the streets empty? You know, why is this? Why is that? Why is nobody outside? And restaurants is a big one because you want your food 10 minutes ago, and then your waiter says, "Oh, please take your time." But we know that doesn't mean take your time. So it's that was my biggest thing. My biggest thing. People in Europe just spend a lot more time outside, and they ride their bikes around, and it's kind of like what you see in the cities here, I guess, you know, and like maybe that's something you see in Southern California, like people hang out on the beach, but typically you don't see that around here. And that was my big change. You know, you don't just in Europe, you would want to do anything if you do, you know, go on a date or something. You're just kind of like, hey, let's go to the walk, let's go for a walk, let's go to the park, let's do this, let's do that. You know, that's something that people do in Europe and not necessarily they do here. So that was my biggest difference.
Definitely like a simpler way of life that I noticed. So you getting back to your story here, and was it in high school when you made up your mind, I'm going to join the Air Force, and what drove you to that?
Other than the fear of college applications? Okay, so my dad takes full credit for my enlistment in the Air Force, full credit, which is fine. But so what drove me is my dad was of service himself. My dad was in the Army back in the 80s. When we moved here, he was like, kind of like, you know what I mean? Like, as a parent, I wouldn't know, but kind of like you probably do. As a parent, you are responsible of like putting your kids somewhere so they can be successful, taken care of, etc.
Absolutely.
So that's what my dad did. My dad was like, okay, where can I kind of put my boys where they're going to be hooked up the most? You know, kind of where's the biggest bang for your buck? So military. because he was in the military, he's heard a lot of stories. He talked to his boys in the friends that he was meeting here in the States, and a lot of them said, if I was younger, I would enlist right away. So that's kind of, he's starting to gather those thoughts. Of course, the beauty of the military is, as everybody has an idea, is discipline. You are organized. You are, military person. Whatever comes to mind, that's exactly what my dad had in mind. And of course, in America, you get paid. My dad, when he was in the army, he was getting paid by getting his butt kicked, and in America, you get paid with money. So that was his biggest thing. Employment, money, food, clothes, discipline, life lessons, all those things. Opportunity, exactly. So that's kind of, from a simple point of view, is kind of how he got to it. So what did he do? He started doing his research. He, as it turns out, the lady that put my parents on to work, earlier I talked, her daughter was in the Air Force Academy, right? So kind of an extreme, so her story doesn't necessarily align with people who go enlisted, but nonetheless. And then so she, which is really crazy, because she, at the end, like when we met her, she was in the Air Force Academy, but she was already slotted to be a pilot. Yeah, her story is crazy. Interesting, because it's kind of like asking someone who's extremely successful, like, I don't know. So not to say that it was a twisted image, but it wasn't illicit side,
Right.
So, and she put us up to it, and she said, yeah, military is good for XYZ, because academy is something I wanted to do, and so did my dad. But academy is, kind of like your Ivy League school. It's the elite. You need to be the smartest in the room. You need to be the fittest. You need to be XYZ. You need to have all your things in line. A letter from a governor, is it? So whatever you need to do to get in the Air Force Academy. But my journey to the Air Force Academy was very simple. I walked in a recruiter's office and I said, I want to join, I want to go into the academy. But you can't as a non-citizen. So if you're not a citizen, you can't go. Very simple. Also, of course, I wasn't necessarily the smartest. Don't get me wrong, I'm smart, but I promise. But I wasn't the smartest, my scores, ACT, whatever you need to get into school. So anyway, my dad did all this research, and I remember even we tried to like settle on the branch. Well, the Air Force, of course, you're gonna fly planes. That's eventually down the line, and the Air Force had other benefits. But I remember my wrestling coach was actually he was in the Air Force as well. He was a defender. He was a cop, military.
Nice.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. So I talked to him, and he did his 4 or his 6 and got out, and he was kind of like, yeah. So, but he was very wise, because he told me only the good things, which you should do. Form your own opinion. He told me.
Exactly.
And so I went to the Air Force recruiter, and you know how recruiters' office is set up. You have like Army, Marines, Air.
Oh yeah.
So all of them are like in line. So I went to the Air Force, I remember, and their door was closed. And I was like, cool. So I went next door to the Navy. I was just curious. In Navy, it was so funny. The guy was like, do you want to be, again, the recruiter's painting a beautiful picture. And he was like, would you like to be on the coast of Italy, doing this thing and being in the Navy, so wonderful. You're at sea. And I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. But after a while, I was like, well, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I love sea, but I just don't know if I could be on a boat like that. And that's what my wrestling coach told me. He's like, Alex, you ever been on a boat? And I was like, yeah. He's like, how long? So that was just, that's where I was kind of like, well, I like sea, but if it's not on my own yacht, I'm not going, it's kind of like that. But so that's why I chose the Air Force. Ultimately trying to fly jets and still pursuing that. But that was kind of the answer to your question in simple terms is I just need to be hooked up, like
Yeah.
kind of like plug and play, easy. And then as I went along, I started discovering even more and more benefits. So it was really cool.
I'm not going to gloss over the fact that you just said my own yacht. Like, I was thinking like a Disney cruise or something. You're like, nah, my own yacht. August 21st, 2014, you earn your U.S. certificate of citizenship. Take us back to that moment.
I woke up. It was a beautiful day outside. And you know what I told myself? I said, Alex, this is a beautiful day to become a citizen of the greatest nation on the planet, the United States. It was wonderful. Often people get their citizenship in basic training. Mine somehow, I don't know, got lost in translation, I guess. I didn't drop the papers on the right desk. You know, you walk in and you're in the single file line. Hey, put your papers here, put your papers here, put your papers here. I guess I missed it. I don't know. So I didn't get in basic training. After that, I got to tech school, technical training, of course, for my ACs. And there you apply for it. Like you just go over and you tell them, I am not a citizen. I would like to be. Because at no point, people don't pressure you to become a U.S. citizen. But with military, you get it like right away. If you'd like, if you go in, you qualify for citizenship. So I walked in and I turned in my papers. I took the picture. It took a couple of weeks, I think. It was cool. It was a really proud moment, but I didn't have like anyone there to share it with me. That was like the only, I guess,
The only downfall of it. Yeah.
Exactly. I remember I told my classmates, it was 11 of us. I was like, guys, I'm getting my citizenship today. Y'all are like the only family I have. Anybody? And people are like, yeah, man, that's cool. We have some to learn. Yeah, I don't know. They suck. We're not friends anymore. But anyway. So no, I walked over and the test in the military for me was fairly simple. They're not there to fail you, you know. It's not like, oh, you failed your test. My parents took it as a green card holder. You qualify for a citizenship after 5 years of residence. And after that, you take a full test, you do everything, and then you earn it. And that's a serious test.
Yeah.
My parents were studying, my brother was studying. In the military, you qualify for citizenship right away. So I got it after 4 years, so kind of ahead of my green card holder term. My parents got it a little bit later after me. But my test was simple. It was like 3 questions. It says something like how many judges are on like judicial court. And then you have to write a sentence for like it would be written and you have to rewrite it. And then the guest speaker would ask you, would tell you a sentence, and then you have to write it down. It was simple. It was like 5 items on the test. And after that, they look at it. Congratulations. Oh, and of course, the interview, just to kind of like see, like, are you a spy, you know, or can you talk in English? And so they did my exam, and then they're like, cool, congrats. I dropped off my photo, and then I picked it up. I picked up my certificate 2 weeks later, and it was cool. It was me and two other people. I think there's a picture I have, and then you go in, and they're like, raise your right hand. You know, it's really cool. We're still by the flag. Yeah. Really, I like celebrating things. You know, so to me, wow. We stood by the flag, raised our hand, we held our certificates, everybody took pictures. It was cool. And then it was one of those like, all right, you're good now. Get back to class. And I was like,
well, I like how you said that was an easy test, and you brought up that first question. I was like, I have no idea what the answer to that one is.
I didn't know either, but it wasn't a disqualifier.
So you and I actually met up when you came through the enlisted professional military education instructor course in beautiful Montgomery, Alabama.
What?
And I had not been here that long. I just started teaching here at the course when you came through. And man, your positivity, as you can tell from the people listening to this, is infectious. You know, it jumps through the screen here doing this interview. And it was the same way when I met you in person. I was like, man, this guy is just so freaking positive. What is it that motivates you internally?
Well, all right. Well, with this question, you're in for a ride.
I'm ready. I'm gonna sit back.
You know, I thought about it. I didn't. I guess I never realized that it was my strength, if you will, or even the quality that I possessed. My philosophy is not very simple. Life is good. You know, it's kind of how we talked earlier about 2020. It's what you make of it.
I've had a good 2020.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So did I.
But like I said, somebody spills a Coke at Cracker Barrel and they're like, oh, it's 2020.
Yeah, 2020, you know. And now I have all these ice that I didn't want in my Coke, and now it's everywhere.
2020 got me again. Yeah.
Like, two things that I want to cover. One, it's hard to describe it, I guess, but life is good. It's just, I've always been a positive person, and as it got pointed out more and more, I was like, well, I guess that's kind of different, you know. But there's nothing to worry about, I guess. It's
so much easier to live like that.
Exactly.
It is
so much easier to live. And it's just look outside. It's beautiful and sunny. The trees are growing, the birds are singing. I always look for things that I'm grateful for, you know, because it's hard to be mad at anything, including life, if you have gratitude. You know? So I always go through life kind of looking for gratitude. And I don't wake up every day in my life fired up, but that's okay. You know, some days are like that. Some days I just want to wake up and do nothing and, you know, complain about, you know, my Amazon package to be delivered too close, too far from my front door. And that's okay, you know, but I don't know. It's so much easier to live, one. And two, what's big is it's all about energy, right? And you know this, you're a teacher. If I'm at my like high, if you will, right? If I spend a little bit of time giving my energy away, I charge people. Because you taught a class of what, 12, 13 typically?
Typically, I've had up to 25 and the last one, well, one of the last ones I taught, yeah.
No kidding. In person or online?
Online.
But online is the same kind of, but in person in particular.
About 12.
Exactly, right? And you charge these people. You just give all energy. You just give. And what you discover is that tables turn. And then on a day you show up and you're feeling low, people charge you. Their energy travels, you know, back and forth. My thing is, I don't know how, but I just, you know, it's all about the story you tell yourself.
Yeah.
So the more people tell me, you know, I'm positive and I'm good mood, you know, good looking, handsome, whatever. So that, you know, kind of helps me to tell myself the same story. And then I just start challenging myself to generate energy, because you can pick it up from here and there, or the sun or the people, or, you know, whatever that is. But my challenge to myself is to generate energy. How can I create energy out of what? So that, of course, launches you on a you know, self-discovery, if you will. What makes me, because everything we go through, we see that some things make us happy. Sometimes some things make us sad. So I always take a mental note, if not write it down, of things that make me happy. Wake up in the morning, it's, you know, the sun is going through my window. Oh, life is good. I go on a bike ride in the morning. Life is good. I hit the weights. I feel good about myself. I take, you know, if I'm in school, I get all A's. If I get a compliment, if I'm able to make someone smile, if I'm able to lift someone up, you know, all these things that make you feel good about yourself, I remember.
So then I can continue doing them, therefore continuing making myself feel good, therefore generating energy, therefore give energy to others. And another thing, and this is what I've been thinking about. I actually thought about it last night. I was having a fire, and I was just kind of like I was talking to my friend. He came over, and we were talking a little bit about immigrant stories. And my friend Javi, he's from Mexico, and we were sitting down talking, and I was just and then I stayed up thinking to myself a little bit. But another philosophy that I've developed over the years, kind of looking at my successes. You look at your successes and you're just thinking, man, I guess I'm good at this, I'm good at that. Like, life's going good. My career's thriving, my relationships are good, my friendships are getting stronger, I'm getting closer with my parents, all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And you start realizing kind of all your successes come from somewhere. So for me, it was always winning the green card. To me, it was like this lot. I remember telling the story to my mom. It's like a golden ticket. It fell from the sky and it's like flowing through the air and it like lands right here on my face, on my forehead, right? It's such a, whether people believe in God or not, whatever universe you believe in, the universe served you a chance by destiny. It just out of nowhere it appeared to me. So for me to be such a lucky person and to take that ticket and waste it, what?
Yeah.
That's kind of like, I'm making it count, if you will. I'm using that opportunity to the fullest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I guess my personality, my own self, my ability to generate energy from my gut, and kind of like the outer forces of whatever people believe in, coming together and creating this very moment that you and I are living. I'm just trying to make it worth it.
Yeah.
It was just like, it would be so sad, to hear such a beautiful story, like, oh, a person grew up in, Ukraine or any other country, gets the green card, moves to the America, and does nothing with it, and lives an average life. So like, or worse yet, screws it up and ends up doing stupid things. And that's not me. Like, if I got picked by whatever force to be here, to win the ticket, then I have every responsibility to make it.
There's John Wooden quote about make every day your masterpiece. And there was something in there too about, make each day your masterpiece, and then live every day as if you were going to die tomorrow, but learn as if you were going to live forever. And I think that is just such a good thing to live by. And like you said, just be positive. We need more positive. We need more people like you walking around and not just being so negative. My daughter comes home from work every day, and she never tells me about a compliment that somebody does at work or something that somebody did that was really sweet or something good. It's always just negative. This person made a huge scene over something super minuscule. So I definitely agree with you. We need to be more thankful for what we have.
So I'm really glad you said what you said, because that's another thing I've read. I don't remember where I read this. I'm a big reader. I get into like business, philosophy, whatever. But it talked, so people, we're like receivers.
Mm-hmm.
We receive certain things. Our eyes are designed to pick things out genetically. We're designed to look for food, look for danger, Oh, like if say you're coasting through Havana or whatever, you see the bush move. Ooh, you look for something, right? We're always looking for things. Genetically, we look for food, danger, survival, water, whatever, right? Shelter. So as we grow and develop, we can program the things that we look for. After all, it's our brain, it's our system that we're using. So positivity, it's important because if you have the mindset of looking for good in things, you will find good in things. Exact opposite is if you have the mindset of looking for bad things, you will find only bad things, you know? And you ever had the effect, like when you look for cars or something, like you're still looking for a brand new, I don't know, BMW XYZ,
Right.
and then you see it everywhere. So it's kind of like that because it's on your mind.
Yeah.
If talking about generating that energy, that positivity, you start finding it in places simply by looking. Same place can look different, right? So I'm really glad you brought that up. I'm a big believer in that.
Well, plus too, you can think about when you see somebody walking down a hallway and that person's going to be negative. You're like, oh gosh, here we go. But if you see someone, that it's going to have a lot of energy, it's going to be infectious. You're like, you track them down. You'll go after them and try to talk to them. And I always think about that. I'm like, I don't want to be that person that when I walk down the hall, somebody's gonna be like, oh, he's going to start complaining and venting to me. Yeah. They pull their phone out. Hey, just give me a second. But yeah. Next question for you. So, how did the transition go with what's your brother doing now?
Oh, my brother. Thank you for asking. My brother's name is Vladimir. He has a wonderful story as well. So my brother's a defender in the Air Force. So he's a
Nice
military police. Yeah. So my brother's story is so wonderful. I tell my students all the time, talk about making the best of it, right? Check this out. So, would you ever want to be a military police officer?
After being a PME instructor and having them in my class, absolutely not. Nothing against them, but no.
Nothing against them. I've never been a defender.
I respect the hell out of them, but no.
Absolutely. I respect them. They do a wonderful job. But hearing their stories, I don't know if I would want to do it.
That's why, yeah.
Right. And I don't know if I would recommend it to anyone. So check this out. I was in the military, but after hearing the stories, so you hear the stories about defenders, and then I just have no desire, and I wouldn't recommend anyone. But again, I don't know what that's like. So when I give advice, I'm going to say facts. So that's what I did with my brother. My brother was joining the military, and I was like, look, bro, I wouldn't want to do it. And this is why, whatever. Right. So, and I told my parents, and parents, they can't, it's their baby. They have to be emotional. And I understand that. So I remember it was so funny. I told my brother kind of like about defenders. So my brother, AKA my mom, decided, you're not going to be a defender. You're not doing this. And my dad, my parents get so caught up with things. Because they don't, I feel like they're still to a point like scared, of things that America hides from us. So that America has in store. Kind of like what's in the, like scared of something that can be in the woods potentially.
Right.
So, anyway, so we decide, not we, my brother, AKA my parents, decide he's not going to be a cop. My brother goes to a recruiter, puts down every job that's on the list, including a cop, gets picked up to be a cop.
Of course.
Wow. How did that happen? So it was and I remember my parents were like, oh my God, I can't believe this. What you didn't tell him? But I was like, no, I told him I don't want to be something. But my brother, he's not a huge confrontationalist.
Yeah.
You're just kind of like, whatever. He put it on the bottom of the list thinking it's going to be the last choice. But if you put it on the list, it's on the list. That's what matters. I remember I fly in for leave and they're like, let's go to recruiter and talk to him. So we go to recruiter and the recruiter looks at us. It was all of us. So me, my brother, and my parents, 4 of us. We're sitting there and we're like, he's not going to be a cop. He's not going to do this. And my brother's sitting right there, not saying a word. It was so interesting. Anyway, so recruiter says, everybody shut up. Vlad, what do you want to do? And do you want to be a cop or no? And my brother's like, kind of like, whatever. And I was like, I just remember I looked over, my parents were like, he doesn't want to be a cop. And he's like, he doesn't want to be a cop, or you don't want to be a cop. Mm. So anyway, my brother goes into police. My parents are worried. losing their minds, blah, blah, blah. And my brother likes it. He shoots guns. He does patrol. He does all this cool stuff, right? And he gets his first base. He goes to MacDill, Florida, Tampa, downtown Tampa. You ever been to MacDill?
Oh yeah.
Downtown Tampa, like all the cool stuff. So he gets like a really cool base. So now my parents are like, he likes it. He got a cool base. I guess it wasn't a bad call after all. So my brother's doing a defender thing. And then he also discovered, who ravens are?
Yeah, absolutely.
So my brother's like, yeah, ravens are, my brother's like, I want to be a raven. So ravens they're security forces for the planes. So he goes on deployment, like they're kind of like the spec up version of cops, right? So he goes to this course, graduates, top of his class, gets picked up. Now he's a raven.
Oh wow.
Yeah, crazy, right? So now he goes on these crazy deployments, and he's loving it. Like that's his style. I have no desire to be a special operationalist. Like I never wanted to be a PJ, not a Navy SEAL. That's not my thing. I respect them. They do great work.
Sure.
And they're sharp. They're awesome. I don't care. I just don't care to be one. That's it. But my brother is different. My brother is like, that's his stuff, man. So he's a raven, goes on cool deployments, gets paid, all these cool things, right? So now his defender career is taking a turn because his opportunity is
all what you make and taking advantage of the opportunity.
Precisely. So get this, he gets back to base. They're moving ravens. It's not going to be in MacDill anymore. You can't be a raven for now. He's like, okay, what can I do? So he starts looking for opportunities. Boat patrol. MacDill has like a boat patrol. You have to do tryouts and get picked up and such. Right. And so boom, he does all of that, succeeds. Now he's a boat patrolsman. So now he goes to work, goes out on the Gulf, patrolling the shore. And then I'm just thinking back, it's like, wow, that's amazing. And then opportunity comes down, and again, he's like spec ops inclined. So, and they're like, Clinton, you want to be a member of our like local SWAT team? He's like, yeah, that sounds fun. So he goes through training, and now he's a certified like SWATsman or whatever they're called. So that just shows you that it really is what you make of it. And you know what always amazed me? And I love this quote. It seems like he just got lucky. It's just so weird how the hardest people who work the hardest, get the luckiest. Like that's so weird, And so his story turned around from none of us being a fan of him being a defender to he completely rewrote how I see defenders. Yeah. Now I was like, oh my God, like he succeeded in like 5 different areas, all through being a military policeman. There's only so few of us in the States, 4.
Yeah.
So my parents want to be close. That's their dream. And my brother, so they're in Washington State. My brother gets orders from Florida to McCord, and he's going to be literally like 20 minutes away from their house. He's going to go home, live with them, and for a little bit.
Yeah.
Like it was so crazy. Everything got fulfilled in that service. Now he's going back. He's going to be back with my parents in Washington. Yeah. Doing his name. Cool. Yeah. I'm so excited for them. Yeah.
And both of y'all got some crazy stories. That's good stuff. So you're now a Airman Leadership School instructor. How rewarding of a job is that for you?
Great question. Thank you. Rewarding is the coolest thing, man. It really is. I've always been like a people. I've always liked folks, and I remember going through military career. I realized that there's things, and I don't know everything, as it turns out. There's things that I know that somebody doesn't. So I've always been like a unconscious like teacher to people. I love talking about fitness. I love teaching people about car things, how to, I don't know, get properly fitting shirts. It doesn't matter. Food. I've always been that. And when people sit down and listen, I'm just kind of like, wow, like that's rewarding of itself. And then I realized that what I know is often more like there's often like the gap gets larger as I move on through my career. Like there's more things I now know that people don't. So every day is rewarding. Going to class and people just simply paying attention to what you're talking is really rewarding. That's one. And two, the most I felt like the epitome, if you will, of my reward, uh, rewardsmanship. That's the word. Was when, like the article said, like I remember I graduated my second class. No, was it my first? My first.
Yep,
I
first
graduated my first class. And we're all in blues. And I remember I was wearing my men's dress. I looked like James Bond. Like the night was awesome. and I just remember when my students would walk up to me and they would say, "Thank you." I was like, "For what?" Like everybody does this. And I had one student that was a maintainer. And as you know, maintainers they have difficult, careers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this student, he was quiet, like all course, participate. He did good, but he was quiet, very observant. He walked up to me and he said, "Son Kalinin, thank you." And I was like, "Yeah, man, no problem." And he's like, "No, no, no. You have literally changed life." And this comes from a salty, he said, salty and crusty maintainer. He said this. He said, and this comes from a salty, crusty maintainer. I now want to stay in the military. I now want to progress. And when he said that, I was just, what? And at that very moment, I realized that it cost me nothing. Like it didn't cost me anything financially to get it, but it was the most rewarding thing I've ever experienced. And then I started thinking, as we go through life, you can buy practically anything. Better car, nicer clothes, good food, house, yacht, everything.
There goes your yacht again.
That's my yacht. Yeah. Little foreshadow. But you can't, but there's things that you can't buy. You can't. And it was just one of those things.
Yeah.
It came from, and then you look in the back, it came from years of hard work, years of you just putting in reps, getting to the position I was, just to be in that seat in front of that student, to tell him something that changes his life.
Yeah.
It didn't cost me anything but hard work. So it was, I love it. Honestly, teaching ALS is the best job I've ever had. It's the happiest I've ever been doing work.
What's next for you? Where do you see yourself a couple of years from now after this PME journey is over with?
Great question. Once again, I think about these things all the time. Next for me is, since I'm already in the military, and after all, I enlisted. I joined to fly jets, right? And that never went away. And it, of course, I came in wanting to fly jets, and it took me 5 years to realize that I want to fly jets, because mind shift changes. You go in and it sounds so romantic. And now I'm at the point where like, well, this is legit my next step. That's the next opportunity. The steps I'm taking directly impact that. So I'm applying for OTS, Officer Training School.
Nice.
I was supposed to apply in January, but it got pushed back. So I'm going to be now applying in May. So I'm applying in May. And for pilot, I intend to put pilot only because I know what I want. I don't. A lot of people put many jobs, see what they can get, and that's cool. But I know exactly what I want, and I feel like, to me, I would like to accept no substitute, like, because that would be like, oh, you kind of make it, you kind of didn't.
Settled.
Yeah, exactly. Settle. I know what I want. I'm going for that alone. So that's my next step, time wise. And then I also, being around people and doing, your podcast and being in front of my students. And I don't know, like I've read a lot of like interesting business and entrepreneur books lately. Mm-hmm. And I'm really, getting that inspiration to do something like that, so that's, I want to start my own like thing, social media, kind of like, and promote myself. Cause
Absolutely.
if I can motivate a student, I can motivate 2 students and I can motivate 5 strangers, and that's all I need. Audience will come. So that's another thing that I want to do. ALS is now 3-year thing for us. So after that, I intend to continue PME route, and much like yourself, go to instructor course, or maybe go back to my career field, HVAC, CE, and teach teach maybe tech school or something.
Yeah.
That's what I want to do. I like people work. Right?
Come replace me.
Yeah, sure. Like I'm all in, that's what I was asking. I'm really interested. And a lot of people say, what, Alabama? This isn't about Alabama. It's about doing what you love.
I
And
tell my wife that every day. It is not about Alabama. It is about this job.
Exactly. And then we'll see, and I had this wild dream, of course, and I'm sure everybody has that, and that I want to be, in movies. I want to be a movie star or something, so I don't know. It's
You
just
got the story for it.
see, like I thank you. And I see it that way. And once again, as you grow and you start taking steps, you understand that it becomes from a wild, crazy dream into reality, like flying jets. Oh my God, that's nuts. But that's literally my next step. Like I've prepared everything. It's not a dream anymore. It's next step.
Yeah. For rapid fire questions, who would play you in a movie?
Who would play me in the movie?
Who would you cast as yourself in a movie?
Oh my God. I don't know. Shoot. Wow. That is a good one. Okay. Well, right now, I'd probably pick Leo, right? If it was going, because he would make a good me.
Yeah, I could see it. I would probably go Rock. We got the same haircut, same build, same height.
What's crazy? I don't know. Oh my God. I don't know if you ever heard this, but so when I saw you and how you carried yourself and your mannerisms, I was like, yo, that's the Rock right there. It was so, you're probably like.
It's funny. People see the Rock and they're like, that's Bodie. So he gets the same thing. So that's good. I'll take that as a compliment.
Yeah, like it was so cool, man. That's what I was like that's why I like when I looked at you in APMAC, I was like, man, I want to be an instructor like him. Like it was so cool, man.
I'll take that. Comparing me and DJ. I like that. What superpower could you have if you were given the gift of one?
Okay. Superpower. I don't know, probably something simple like super strength.
Super strength.
Cool.
Which one?
Actually, no, you know what? I would be like super, super smart. That's what I would want to do. Like be just like.
It's an underrated one. Everybody focuses on strength or speed or vision, but yeah.
I want like my most important, because your most important muscle is right here, is in your head. So that's what I would do. Just
it's a good one.
That's it.
And then one book that you can recommend to somebody to read.
So there are a couple that I would recommend, and I typically take response. But if I would recommend one, I would pick the all-time classic, Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And have you ever read that book?
I have not.
So this is why I picked this book so I'm gonna tell you a little bit about this book. So this book is all about how to talk to people, how to interact, how to be a good friend, how to listen, how to give advice, like all the things that you need. Like it's your ultimate guide to communicating with humans. Very, very well written, very easy. Now, this is why I picked this book, because communication is, I don't know if the percentage, but probably like 95% is the root of all problems. Whether it's not enough, too much, too little, whether it's approach is wrong. Often people, when we're talking about giving someone feedback or whatever, like communicate, often the approach is off. I can tell you something and be right, but you take it the wrong way. Or I can tell you something and offend you, and I can tell you the same thing and you take it as feedback.
Yeah.
So this is the one book that I would recommend people, because I think it's very important to focus on how people interact.
Yeah.
You go your entire life focusing on many things, but one thing you interact with the most and constantly is humans. Really.
Yeah. Talking to strangers is another good one.
Yes, that's on my list. I read it. I read the review, and it was Malcolm Gladwell, right?
Yep. I'm glad. Well, yeah.
Well, I would like to thank you for hosting me. It was a great honor. When you reached out, I was ecstatic. It was really cool. And I would like to parting words for your audience is learn something. You listen to these podcasts. If you can walk away learning something new, I would be grateful for that. If you can only learn one thing, that's okay. Go through life and learn something every day. Become a student of life. You go to the store, learn something. You walk down the street, you take a bike ride, you go to the gym, you go on a date, you go out to the movies, you watch a movie, you watch a documentary, you listen to podcasts, listen to songs, whatever it is, learn something. And you don't have to learn math equations to learn something. Learn something about you, about the world that surrounds you, your significant other, your kids, your parents. Learn something. Become a student of life, and don't just go through life, grow through life. And apply that mindset to everything you do, because if you're just doing things and it serves, it doesn't serve you any benefit in the end, then maybe reevaluate what you're doing. So do something and take something away from it, no matter what it is. Because often you learn something useful, or often, like Thomas Edison, learn how to not do things. So it's very important, folks.
Good stuff. It was my pleasure having you on here. When we started this, you were one of those people that we were like, got to get him on here, got to do this. And I'm honored to have you on here and to to have you share your experience with our audience is awesome. It's a remarkable story. You were writing the article. It needs to be a movie with Leonardo. And then when we play the podcast piece in the movie, we can have Dwayne Johnson interviewing Leonardo on here when we reenact this. Well, that is all the time we've got. Once again, check us out. Facebook at The Shadows Podcast. Instagram, _Shadows_podcast.